Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? And welcome to another edition of the State of the Saints podcast, where we talk New Orleans Saints. My name is TJ Jones. Thanks for checking out the podcast. I really do appreciate it. On this edition, we're going to be doing a Q&A. That's right. It is going to be a Q&A edition of the State of the Saints podcast, where I take questions from loyal listeners. And first off, I want to say thank you all for chiming in with your questions. I really do appreciate it. But before I get into the Q&A, we have some breaking news. Former New Orleans Saint, New England Patriot, and Seattle Seahawk Brandon Browner has been sentenced to 8 years in state prison for attempted murder on his ex-girlfriend. That's right. According to the LA Times, Brandon Browner has been sentenced to 8 years in state prison for attempted murder. Brandon Browner broke into his girlfriend's house and beat her really badly, including taking her face and pushing it into the carpet, almost smothering her. And he did this in front of his ex-girlfriend's children. Brandon Browner, while pushing his ex-girlfriend's face to the floor, almost killing her, yelled out, and this is according to his ex-girlfriend, he said, "I'm gonna bust you up, and I'm a very dangerous man." Wow. Brandon Browner, once again, sentenced to 8 years in prison for attempted murder. You know, we as Who Dat Nation members, we think about Brandon Browner, the football player. The football player that wasn't very good for the franchise. You know, I can go on record and say that Brandon Browner was by far one of the worst cornerbacks in Saints history. Worse than Eric Allen, worse than Fred Weary, worse than Fred Thomas. Worse than Jason Smoke Turkey David. That's right, man. I think he was by far one of the worst cornerbacks in New Orleans Saints history. The guy got beat like a Persian rug week after week after week. He even holds the NFL record for most holding calls in NFL history. That goes to show you how bad he was for the New Orleans Saints. I can remember some of the things that Brandon Browner did in the Saints uniform, and I can really truly tell you, none of them are really that good. I can remember Brandon Browner when the Carolina Panthers came into the Superdome and they were undefeated. This was the year that the Carolina Panthers went to the Super Bowl. And I remember Ted Ginn Jr., that's right, our New Orleans Saint, Ted Ginn Jr., in a Carolina Panther uniform, beating Brandon Browner every single time. It was like Carolina just called 9 routes all the time. And for those that don't know what a 9 route is, that's basically like a wide receiver just running straight down the field. You know, no post, no cut, no nothing. Just racing to the end zone. And I can just remember Brandon Browner just getting beat time after time after time. I remember Brandon Browner getting into it on the sideline with defensive coordinator Dennis Allen. Why was he yelling at Dennis Allen? I don't know. Maybe because he was getting smoked like a turkey. Maybe because he was getting burnt like a biscuit. Maybe he realized at that moment that he was straight up, bona fide, certified trash. That's right, absolute trash. Maybe he realized that, and maybe that's the reason why he was yelling. But back to this story right here with Brandon Browner, and I just want to say this. For the past couple of days, I have been really disappointed in the National Football League. And I've been very disappointed at the National Football League is because the league is really starting to show the only thing that they actually care about is the bottom line. All they care about is their money, generating money, and they don't give a damn about anything but making money. Because these players out here, they are just doing anything that they want to. The NFL don't give a damn. The NFL don't care if Kareem Hunt beats a woman as long as he beats that linebacker in space. The NFL doesn't care if Reuben Foster tackles a woman as long as he tackles that quarterback on that blitz. See, they don't give a damn about anything except for them making that money and these players performing so people like you and me could come to the games and cheer on the home team. And when you look at situations like Brandon Browner, I think that this has to be a wake-up call for the National Football League. When you're playing a sport that basically you have to be the manliest of men, when a lot of the times when the coaches are in the locker room, they want you to be so aggressive. They want you to look at that other guy on that other team and want to take his head off or take your shoulder and drive it through this human being. And the NFL is not answering the question. How can a player turn this off? Or better yet, the NFL is not doing anything to help these players turn it off. Man, look, we can go all day about what the NFL needs to do, but as long as the NFL doesn't do anything at all, as long as they ignore these situations and only deal with them when TMZ gets a hold of the videotape, they're going to continuously be disgraced. The NFL has to do something, man. I love the NFL. I've been watching the NFL my entire life, as long as I can remember. I've been a Saints fan, but I've always been a fan of the National Football League. As long as these situations keep happening, more and more televisions are going to get turned off, man. So they got to do something. They have to do something. They have to really step in. And maybe not even just the NFL, but these organizations as well. These teams, they need to step in because they are the ones that have to police these players, man. They have to understand what these players are going through. I don't know if it's I don't know, every couple months, maybe somebody come in that is over anger management or something like that and teaching these players how to control their anger, but something has to go down or, man, somebody going to get seriously hurt. And I don't want to see that happen, man. I really don't want to see that happen. So NFL, you got to do something because right now you're only showing us that the only thing you give a damn about is your damn self. But this is the Q&A edition of the State of the Saints podcast. So I got 3 questions from loyal listeners of the podcast. And once again, thank you very much for chiming in, for taking time out to ask your questions. I really do appreciate it. And also, I want to say thank you to everybody that answered the State of the Saints podcast question of the day. And the question of the day was, will the New Orleans Saints get home field advantage? 83% of you said yes, 17% say no. If you ask me, I don't think the Saints are going to get home field advantage. Looking at the Rams schedule and the Saints schedule, I think that the Rams have a little bit more of an easier schedule than the New Orleans Saints. So I think that the Rams may get home field advantage. But I do think that the Saints can go out to LA and knock off the Los Angeles Rams to get to the Super Bowl. But the first question comes from Jackson Henry. And Jackson asks, should the Saints sign Kelvin Benjamin? Wow, that's a good question. Well, if you didn't hear, Kelvin Benjamin has been cut from the Buffalo Bills. It's been well documented that Kelvin Benjamin has had issues with the team, and finally the team let him go. Should he be a New Orleans Saint? I'm going to say no, for the simple fact that I think that Kelvin Benjamin is not only overrated, but he's lazy. Kelvin Benjamin at one time was up to 285 pounds. Now, if you don't know who Kelvin Benjamin is, he plays wide receiver. And wide receivers are not 285 pounds. You have defensive linemen who aren't even 285 pounds. That goes to show you right there that he's lazy. Kelvin Benjamin looks like one of those people that are just happy that they made it. They're good at just being a part of the National Football League, just being in that number, being able to go home and ride in that nice car and roll through the old neighborhood so everybody can see him doing big things. He doesn't seem like the type of guy that just cares about winning, that wants to win championships and wants to cement a legacy. So if you ask me, the answer is absolutely not. The Saints do not need lazy players on the team. The Saints don't need slackers on the team. The Saints need players that are going to do everything that they possibly can to win. Now, if you've been following Michael Thomas on Twitter for the last couple of days since they lost to the Cowboys, Michael Thomas has been really, really angry. And you have so many people out there that have been saying to him in comments to let it go, let it go. But I'm glad that Michael Thomas hasn't let it go, because that shows me right there that he wants to win every damn game. And when you have drive like that, that's a person I can get behind. He cannot wait to get on the field to take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to get the bad taste out of his mouth that was suffered in Arlington, Texas. I can respect that. Kelvin Benjamin reminds me of a guy who, if they just lose, he don't care. Let me go home to my nice house and be around my family and everything like that. Let me go ahead and listen to my surround sound, and I'm good with that. And let me look out the window and see the 3 cars that I got and all the money that I'm making because I'm robbing a team. That's right, I said it. To answer your question once again, absolutely not. The Saints don't need Kelvin Benjamin. The Saints need winners. The second question is coming from John Keller. John Keller asks, if the Redskins call the Saints, should the team consider trading Teddy Bridgewater for a high draft pick? Wow. Man, that's a good question. Should the Saints consider trading Teddy Bridgewater if the Redskins call? Well, it all depends. It all depends on what the Redskins are offering. Now, I'm kind of on the fence with this because if they offer a first-round draft pick, would the Saints get a better quarterback or a quarterback with better potential than Teddy Bridgewater? According to ESPN's Ty McShay and Mel Kiper, you know, the 2 guys that scout these college players to tell you if these guys are pro-ready or what kind of success they're going to have in the league. Well, according to these guys, there aren't really many good quality quarterbacks in the 2019 NFL draft. I mean, for the exception of Justin Herbert from Oregon, then you have Drew Lock from Mizzou and Daniel Jones from Duke. These are the 3 prospects, and all of these guys have flaws, and none of these guys are one of the guys that they see being the future of the National Football League. So to answer your question, I don't think that it would be a good idea to trade Teddy Bridgewater. I don't think that this would be a good look for the Saints. Teddy Bridgewater is a good quarterback, man. Teddy Bridgewater, a lot of people forget this, but he was the 32nd pick in the NFL draft by the Minnesota Vikings. I have to tell you something because a lot of people forget about this. You know, the league goes on, time goes on, and we tend to forget these things. Teddy Bridgewater coming out of Louisville, he was ranked the top quarterback coming out of college. The only reason why Teddy Bridgewater did not get drafted first overall is because he had a bad pro day. If he probably didn't have that pro day, then he probably would have been first overall. Well, it was because the way that he threw the football, they were talking about how nervous he was. He dropped. So that was the reason why the Minnesota Vikings, in my opinion, got a steal. And he was good for the Minnesota Vikings until he got hurt. I feel like the Saints have their quarterback of the future in Teddy Bridgewater. And I was paying attention to something. Maybe I'm looking way too much into this, but the game where the Saints played the Redskins on Monday Night Football and Drew Brees became the NFL's all-time leading passer, Drew Brees spoke in the locker room after the win, after he broke the record. And his speech was kind of weird to me, man. And I'm going to let y'all hear this and y'all tell me, am I wrong or does it sound like Drew Brees is about to wind it up?
Obviously, this is special, guys. And I hope everyone in this locker room knows that each and every one of you is a part of this, man, and forever will be. But this is not the reason that I'm still playing this game. All right, this is a special moment. I'll remember this forever. But I came back for one reason. And you guys know what that is. So let's keep taking steps one at a time, man. Because I got my sights, you have your sights, we have our sights set on something even greater.
I came back for one reason, and you know what it is. That part of the speech stuck out to me. For the last couple weeks, that has stuck out to me because I always just wondered to myself, why would he say that? If he's not thinking about retiring or he's not about to wind it up, why would he say that? And I feel like that's the reason why the Saints went out and got Teddy Bridgewater. Now, they probably downplaying it But I really feel like Drew Brees is about to wind it up and about to retire. And I think that the Saints went out and got Teddy Bridgewater to be his successor. And I think that the Saints have a quality quarterback and a quarterback that can be a future champion in New Orleans. I mean, I like Teddy Bridgewater. If you follow him, he was a quarterback. He's not the guy that's going to wow you with his arm strength like a Patrick Mahomes. He's not one of those guys that can just throw the ball 70 yards. But he's a guy that doesn't turn the ball over. He's a guy that makes good decisions. And he's a good pocket passer. And he'll scramble when he needs to. I think that the Saints have a good quality backup quarterback and a good quarterback for the future. By the time Drew Brees retires, if he retires after his 2-year contract, Teddy Bridgewater is going to be like 27 or 28 years old. So I think that they need to keep him in New Orleans. But, I mean, if a team offer you the first-round draft pick and the Washington Redskins, they looking like a dumpster fire right now. Man, you talk about a team with bad luck. Sheesh. First, Alex Smith go down, and then backup Colt McCoy breaks his leg. I mean, wow. I mean, this is a snake-bit team right now. So I don't think the Washington Redskins probably are going to win another game. So if they don't win another game, maybe that would be a good look for the Saints because maybe they'll be looking at a top 10 draft pick. So ain't nothing wrong with picking up the phone to see what the Redskins talking about, but I wouldn't be so ready to get rid of Teddy Bridgewater. And the last question is coming from Daniel Bell. Will Brandon Marshall play this week versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I think Brandon Marshall will make his Saints debut versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think Brandon Marshall should have made his Saints debut against the Dallas Cowboys last week because I think that if Brandon Marshall would have played in a game against the Dallas Cowboys, I think the Saints probably would have did enough in order to win the football game. Here was the reason why. After watching the New Orleans Saints Dallas Cowboy games 3 times, I watched this game 3 times because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't tripping, and I want to make sure that I'm giving you all the best analysis that I possibly can. Watching this game 3 times, the Saints wide receivers, for the exception of Michael Thomas, looked soft. They was getting bullied. They was getting whooped at the line of scrimmage. And these guys seemed like they were so timid. They looked like the shy kid in class. That is what they looked like. They were getting punked. They was getting rumped. And they was getting stumped at the line of scrimmage. If Brandon Marshall would have played in the game, they would not have been able to bully him. Brandon Marshall is known for catching a ball and getting yak yards after the catch. He is a guy who turns into a running back after he catches the ball. Is he the same Brandon Marshall he was when he was playing for the Denver Broncos in his 20s? Absolutely not. But I fail to believe that Brandon Marshall would have got punked out by the Dallas Cowboys cornerbacks. I don't see that happening. I feel like if Brandon Marshall would have played, I don't think he probably would have went for like 120 plus yards, but he would have did enough damage and he would have beaten his man at the line of scrimmage that the defense would have to adjust to Brandon Marshall beating that cornerback. So they probably would have had to roll some coverage to his side, and that would have opened up opportunities for other receivers to make plays. Now, I'm not saying Michael Thomas would have went off because I have to respect Byron Jones. He has been doing some big things all season. But I feel like other players would have got opportunities because of Brandon Marshall. Brandon Marshall will play versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think that he will catch a touchdown. I think they might put him in on some goal line situations in the red zone. But I think that he will make his Saints debut against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But this has been the State of the Saints podcast. Thank you all for checking out the podcast. And I want to remind you, if you have not done already, please subscribe to the State of the Saints podcast on YouTube. Go to youtube.com, search the State of the Saints podcast, and also follow the State of the Saints podcast on Twitter at SOTS Podcast 8. That's SOTS Podcast 8. Till next time, all I have to say is, who dat?